some people. Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm just doing some invites. If you don't mind doing that, if you can do the same, if you hold the screen down for about a half a second, a list of all of your mutual.
Good morning, Chip. Good
Hey,
morning, room.
how's it going?
You know, I feel you as a friend. When I saw Chip Barnes invite you, I said I gotta just say good morning and see how this man's doing, because I know you're a good man, buddy.
Well, thank you.
Hopefully, I haven't really gotten into the conversation or the topic yet, but
Well, I literally
what's going on?
the live has started. So it's only been going on. There's an echo, by the way, so you might want to try reconnecting. But we just started. There's been no conversation so far.
How's everything going? How's things looking? At least, Chip, I started off with this. I think by what happened last week with Iran sending a very clean message to Israel, I think that might have put them in check a little bit, man. I think now they feel there's potential for, if you have a glass house, don't keep throwing rocks,
Yeah,
What do
I
you
totally
think?
agree with you. I think it might be better though for you
I
to
think
reconnect because there's a
very
huge
clear.
echo. There's a huge delay. So let's if you reconnect,
Okay, go
I'll bring you
ahead.
back up. Okay?
Okay, buddy. Okay.
Yeah, for whatever reason, sometimes when people come up, there's an echo, and I think to clear that up, you have to exit TikTok and then restart your data feed like airplane mode, and then come back into TikTok and then come back up. That should fix it. Anyway, welcome everybody. Happy Sunday. Hi, Maz. Thank you for being here as always. Where I live, it is an absolutely perfect day. It's a little on the warm side, but I kind of like that. It's about 80 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny, not a cloud in the sky, light breeze. Not bad. I'll take it. And as I like to say, any day that I'm not behind bars or in a war zone, it's a good day. I hope you, for anybody who's ever been in those situations, you know what I mean. Okay, we have OMRM, Republicans of, and it says MO. I'm not sure what that stands for, but come on in. Veronica, I'm not sure. I'll check though.
How you doing, Mr. Chip? God
I'm
bless
okay.
you.
Thank you.
God bless you, man. I myself, I received a notice after I protest peacefully by the federal court in Chicago. I received misconduct charge. I mean, nobody arrested me or nothing, but they found my address and they sent me the misconduct charge. So basically, they trying to stop our freedom from freedom of speech, which is the First Amendment of the
Yep.
Constitution. And I don't see a lot of Americans, like they doing something about it. I mean, uh, today we definitely know that these corrupted Democrats are preferring to send taxpayers' money to commit genocide instead of helping Americans. And with that, I hope all Americans will stop funding this genocide and killing around the world. And when
Yep.
most veterans come back after those wars, most of them they go harmless and no, they don't get any help. So it's time to think about rebuilding United States and get back, the old institution back to Americans because we know today they're all controlled by AIPAC and the Zionists. So I'm question myself sometimes, like if I'm still in the United States of America or United States of Israel.
Yeah.
And with that, I would thank you for everything you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing, Mr. Chip, and you have a blessed day.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you saying those things and for sharing your point of view here and coming on. Please come back. There was a comment that I wanted to address. It's by a regular visitor who stays in the comments. And unfortunately, he doesn't come up for talking. I'd love to speak with him sometime if he's open to it. But his name is Daganos, I think it is. There's a couple lightning bolts next to his name. And his point was for the previous guest who said that, Iran was sort of showing its strength to Israel. And then Daganos said, well, yeah, 99% of what they sent got knocked down. Yeah, agreed. But what they were able to do is it's called probing with force. And what Iran did is to find out exactly how and where the defense forces work and carefully document that, such that if they do engage in a next stage of escalation or retaliation or whatever is happening, they know exactly how many munitions to fire, where, when, and how. So, I think in that regard, that was a smart move. And I think they only targeted military targets too. I think they, not harming civilians. There was I believe one person who lived in Israel of a younger person of Arab descent who got either injured or I don't know if she got unalive. I don't remember the exact report. But for the most part, it didn't target any civilians. Unlike Israel, which tends to, at best, indiscriminately fire things, and at worst, intentionally fire things at civilian targets, including with rifles, tanks, snipers, and of course, bombs. It's pretty hard to dispute that. And for anybody who does, I don't think they're just not being realistic. Whether you want to argue one way or the other, the public perception now is that Israel is in fact indiscriminately killing Palestinians. And that's why we see these protests. That's why we see so much outrage. Maybe you'll say that I've heard people say that the college kids who are protesting are clueless, that they don't understand the history, that they don't know the facts. Listen, regardless of all that stuff, even if everything was in Israel's favor, let's just say you want to make that argument. If you bomb people and tens of thousands of them die, regardless of how it happened, even if it was human shields, which I don't think it is, people are going to react to that. They're going to say that that's wrong, as they should. And for example, if the tables were turned, just imagine for a second that there was an Arab state and a bunch of Jewish refugees that are scattered around the world were hit and unalive, 30,000 or so, we would be hearing that this is the second Holocaust. We heard that with what happened on 10/7, that this was the most deadly event since the Holocaust, and the aspirations of the H group was to unalive every Jewish person, and therefore it's a genocide. I mean, these ridiculous claims. And then they turn around and they kill 35, 40,000 people and expect to be given a pass that they're just doing it to defend their country. I mean, no one's buying this shit, which is why there's the protests. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu got on national TV and gave an address claiming that somehow this is all just based on anti-Semitism and it's inappropriate and it's reprehensible and all this anti-Jewish rhetoric, which is bullshit. Nobody cares about somebody being Jewish. What they care about is the killing. Obviously, duh. And they want the killing to stop, and they want there to be accountability for the killing. Right? I think that's fair. So to categorize these people as supporters of terrorism or Hamas or they hate Jewish people or all this other stuff, there's been no violence. Let's be clear, there's been no violence at the protests by the protesters. However, there has been violence by the authorities against the protesters. At Columbia University, I just watched a video about this. The president of Columbia University made the claim that the students who were at the protests were basically suspended and therefore they were trespassing. There's only one problem. Their suspensions didn't occur until a day after they were arrested. So they were officially still students enrolled in the university, exercising their First Amendment rights, which is freedom to gather for public assembly to redress grievances against the government. And all they were asking was the university to divest from anything related to Israel, to remove all their investments so that, what happened with South Africa can eventually happen and turn the tide to, rid ourselves of this horrible situation and get the Palestinians to a place where they have a legitimate future and not this continued bullshit that they try to justify. Now let's face one thing. Israel claims it's the victim, that it's this little country among all these Arab people, and the Arab people are inherently violent and they hate Jewish people, and that all they want to do is get rid of the Jews, and the Jews are protecting themselves because their very survival depends on this defense. That's the party line. People believe that crap. Now, what actually happens is that Israel, in the course of conducting what it claims is its own security operations, brutally and violently represses Palestinians. Now, there are cases where people are doing things that are resistance exercise. You can call it terrorism, you can call it what you want, but they're legitimate people who are angry and they do lash out. So you can make the argument that when somebody comes up to an IDF soldier and they carry a stone to hit them in the head or a knife or whatever, that you can legitimately, that is defense. But in most cases, you have the Israeli military, and this is self-admitted. Go to the group Breaking the Silence. They self-admit that they go in purposely late at night and raid Palestinian homes. It has nothing to do with militants. And they do it to terrorize the population and to put them in a state of constant fear. And they never know what's going to happen next. They weld their doors shut. People who live in, Hebron and elsewhere, they want to make it an all-Jewish street, so they weld the doors shut of Palestinian residents, and they're forced to climb out their goddamn windows to get out of their houses. What kind of crap is that? Hold on, check just a second. So this is the brutality. They unalive people in the West Bank on the regular. They're protecting rabid settlers who are going into the West Bank right now, as we speak. There are people with very heavily armed settlers that are rabid Zionists that believe that the entire Eretz Israel is theirs to take, and therefore Palestinians are basically interlopers, and whatever happens is fair game. They probably don't care about unaliving people. They just want them to leave the land so they can steal the land. This has always been the objective. It's always been couched in other language to try to justify it. It's always about security. It's the slow and steady settlement building that's condemned internationally and at the UN. So you hear the argument that the creation of Israel is legitimate because the UN sanctioned it. We hear that a lot, right? But all of the UN resolutions subsequent to that are invalid because people are against Israel or some shit like this. They can't have that both ways. Either the UN is illegitimate and therefore the founding of Israel was illegitimate, or it is legitimate and all the subsequent acts by the international community are valid. You can't have it both ways, folks. So with all that said, I'm going to invite my friend Shaq to contribute to the conversation. Shaq, I was on that live you were on, and everybody was just kind of spouting off their hate, which is, I can't stand people who can't, see the bigger picture. Anyway, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm very well, Chip. Hope you're well, brother. You know what? It's very odd and surprising that some people, despite everything that I've seen myself as well, with a week's worth of lives going on and ample apology, that people just continue. It's divisive, and I think you're right. People don't see the bigger picture. They're stuck. And here we are. We're calling out people for prejudice and racism and whatever. With the Zionists, they are the masters of prejudice and racism. But there are people who are supposedly on our side who can't let go of their own prejudice and hate. Now they're maintaining, and it's only a small number, but some of them are quite vocal, and it's very sad to see. I was very disappointed. You came into a live and it bloody kicked off. And I thought, how does that make us look? How does that make the pro-Zionist, the anti-Zionist people look? I think it makes us look very, very weak. Well, it's definitely not a good look. If you've got a difference, put it aside, and deal with something in private. If you've got an issue with somebody, approach them, directly. If somebody's blocked, you're blocked. So what? I've blocked loads of people. Loads of people have blocked me. They don't like what I say. I can live with that. I have no, if somebody wants to be, somebody doesn't want to communicate with somebody in particular, then what's the big deal? Just move on and get on with your life and do what you've got to do. If there's, you've got an important campaign to work on, you've got a mission, work on the mission, not working on people's personalities. It's pathetic. I find it really, I think it's very weak, actually.
It's regrettable that it is. It is very divisive, and it's very counterproductive, in my opinion, to direct your energy towards ego and outrage and, this sanctimonious position on social justice issues. And, it's okay to be hurt by something. If somebody does or says something that hurts you, it's not unreasonable to have a reaction. Intentionally professes to follow one of the major Abrahamic religions, all of which put forgiveness as the cornerstone of their religion, as long as somebody makes a sincere apology and vows not to repeat said behavior. but for whatever reason, they can't let go of it and practice what they say they believe in, which is unfortunate. And I kind of liken it to, a situation where, people, it's always easy. It's like the free speech issue. Let's say, for example, you support free speech, except somebody says something you don't like, and then all of a sudden you don't support free speech, you want to censor things. In your religion, if you believe in forgiveness, if somebody offends somebody else, you look at them and say, well, that person should be forgiven because they apologize and they're contrite. But when you're the person that's outraged by the behavior, you don't do the same thing. That's called hypocrisy, in my opinion. And people can do whatever the hell they want, and it's their life. They can, like I said, but my opinion is this. There are plenty of people on TikTok who I don't have very high regard for. I don't feel like they're good advocates, or I don't like their style, or I think they're, annoying, or whatever it may be. We all have those kind of things. And the best thing to do, in my opinion, is just move on. If you don't want to spend time in a room with somebody who you don't like, go to another room. Turn the channel, so to speak. There's one person, and listen, it's not about me, it's about the issue. This is the most important thing. When this shit all kicked off in the very beginning, the very first thing that I asked, excuse the noise, was I went to other people and I said, hey, I don't want this to be a distraction. Just one second, I'm going to mute myself. Okay, all the noises, the fire truck. Leave people. The Mo Pesci, if you don't know who Mo Pesci is, he's a very active pro-Palestinian. He's actually a Palestinian human being. He's of that descent. I think he has relatives that have been unalived in this conflict, probably many, like in the high 20s, which is horrible. And yet, because of some of the ways he phrased things, doing his work advocating for Palestine or dealing with other situations, he was required to bend his knee and profusely apologize and be publicly humiliated and shamed by a group of people. And that seems to be what people want. They want to humiliate and shame people and stand on their high ground, pointing down to people saying, you messed up in my opinion, you violated my terms, therefore you must pay the price and be exiled and burned at the stake. Get off your high fucking horse. I understand if you're harmed, you're hurt by something, yeah, but those are your feelings. And feelings matter, and people should probably try to be sensitive and concerned about others' feelings. I agree with that. We should all be considerate of each other. However, if you look at things in context, you have people who have been pushed out of their homes. They are homeless. A lot of them don't have food. They don't have water. They don't have the ability to use a toilet. They're getting sick from disease. They don't have medication. They don't have anesthesia for amputations. The hospitals have all been damaged. They're pushed out of their areas down into tent cities where all sorts of diseases are spreading, and they're living in misery, and they're being bombed repeatedly again on top of that. And the aid convoys aren't allowed in. And just think for a second as you sit in your area of comfort and convenience and privilege, and here you are focusing on some bullshit side issue that has kind of unfortunately, created some sort of, anger within you. Put aside your anger, think of the bigger picture, be altruistic, and don't crucify somebody, because everybody has some things within them that are positive to contribute. And for the people I spoke of earlier, for whom I don't have the highest regard, you know what? I'm very glad, regardless of how I feel personally about them or how much they annoy the fuck out of me, that they're advocating for an important issue. Anybody who does anything good, I like to tell this to my mother, I don't like President Trump. I'm not a Trump fan. I don't vilify anybody who does like Trump. But Donald Trump, during his presidency, there wasn't any new wars, or there weren't any new wars, excuse me. And he did some prison reform, which I thought made a lot of sense. I don't like much of anything else that he did, or how he behaves, or his demeanor, and how he treats women, blah, blah, blah. But I think it's fair to point out the positive. I don't cancel Donald Trump because I don't like 85% of him. I appreciate the 15 that he does that I agree with. That's called political pragmatism. And a lot of these younger people don't understand that people like me have been advocating for issues like this for over 3 decades, longer than most of these young people have even been alive. And for them to come out and try to cancel somebody who has something good to contribute to the movement because their sensibilities were offended, I just want to say, grow up, grow the fuck up. Think of the bigger picture. It's not about any one of us. It's about the message. It's about the mission.
Chip, I thought we were the people who are fighting cancel culture, and unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are allegedly on our side who are still infected with cancel culture. I'm at a loss as to what more you could have done. I spent the best part of a week watching you on lives, watching other people talking about you on lives, and you jumping on other people's lives. What I can say is whatever you said at the time, which wasn't very pleasant at all, for somebody who uh, has demonstrated that he doesn't run away, he doesn't hide, and you face whatever the past was, and you've apologized and you've made it very, very clear. Yet people are still looking for blood. I don't know. I mean, I'm a bit puzzled. Maybe you need to walk in the street naked, take your clothes off, and put up a sign over your head, and knock on every single door and apologize to every single individual, because that's
Let me give you an example of that. So I was on a live that Shaq was on about maybe an hour and a half ago, and there were some very competent pro-Palestinian speakers, many of whom are among this group we're referring to, the younger folks. I genuinely appreciate their advocacy. I don't agree with how they processed and handled the situation we're referring to, but that's for them to deal with and not for me to say. But I can just step out of the room if I don't like that shit. However, there was somebody in the comments who I've known who came onto a live that Zabita was hosting and I was in. They brought me up as a guest. And it's just, this person sort of publicly tried to shame me and talk down to me and try to lecture me in front of 500 people. And this is a younger guy who's also, I think, ex-military or getting ready to go into the military. His name is Iskander Malawi or something. And in the live, this is what he said. Make a video begging for forgiveness. That's what he said to me. I'm like, dude, don't tell me what to do. I've spent over 10 hours on live video apologizing to probably over 3,000 or 4,000 people. What else do you expect in somebody? I'm not going to make a video getting on my knees and groveling consistently. You can't be on a permanent apology tour for life. That is an unreasonable expectation. Imagine if you transgressed against somebody in your family. Let's say you got in trouble, did something stupid, and every time they see you, like, get on your knees and apologize. 6 months later, get on your knees and apologize. What the fuck is that? Life has to move on, and if you don't want to associate with somebody, fine. But don't hold anger within you. It actually destroys your sense of well-being to hold anger within you. It's a very negative emotion, and hate is hate. And if you think that I hate a group and I said something that makes you think that, how are you any better for hating me for doing the thing that you're saying you were opposed to? Hate is a bad emotion and a bad thing. It shouldn't be something that people harbor or express in general. That's my point of view.
You know, from what I could see, Chip, you know, you've done the apology multiple times. I can't see any more that you can say. People just don't want to let go, and I think there's maybe a small bunch of people who were behind pushing that mindset. You know, but even, let's say, you know, Zabida, who was quite vocal against you, she gave you space on her. If she had harbored that hatred, which I don't see she does at all, okay, she wouldn't have, you know, entertained you, and she did. And then, from what I could see, she was even clear in defending those who were unfair towards you. You know, and Zabida, you know, without a doubt, she's a powerful voice.
Yes.
She's got a very influential, got a massive following. She knows her stuff. You know, she hammers Zionists and puts them in their coffins, okay, and puts them to sleep, and properly cooks them. They can't run from her. She's not a wallflower, you know, that is going to shy away from yourself. That she wouldn't give you that space. She gave you that space, and everything was clarified. So, and this went on for hours and hours. You know, I wanted to go to sleep. You know, it went on into the early hours of the morning. I can't imagine what more can be done. You know, look, I'm a Muslim. As a Muslim, I'm taught to take somebody's apology and accept it, unless they prove otherwise. Not for me to second guess what's really in their heart. That's not my job. Okay. As a Muslim, it doesn't. My religion doesn't allow me to do that either. To try and guess what may be really in your heart. I'll judge you by what you do, your actions, by what you say, by what is visible to me. And what is visible to me is that you have been a relentless ally of Palestinian people. You're not a Muslim. I mean, from what we can gather, you don't have any particular faith, and you're a massive supporter of a huge oppressed community of Muslims, and you've proven yourself. That's all I'm interested in. What else goes on in your private life or in your background is none of my fucking business. I don't really care. If you harbor any ill feelings towards me because I might be non-white. I've not seen it. I don't
No,
detect it. I have zero uh, sort of suspicion of it.
yeah.
But if you did, to be honest, I don't give a damn. Yeah,
Well,
because we're all
let me say this.
humans.
This is the one important distinction that I want to make. There's never a time that you can support any kind of language that was issued by me, especially as somebody who's white. I get it, and it's also very difficult to talk about social phenomena that involves these divisive situations in our culture. And nobody once asked me, "Why did you say that?" No one once said, what was the context within which you issued something that was offensive like that? No one asked that. Nobody who was condemning me ever went back and looked and were aware of any of the work that I've done for the past 35 years. They just assumed that I was some sort of horrific, white supremacist or KKK member that was marching around in a white hood constantly and condemning a whole group of people. Nothing could be further from the truth, but nobody cared to ask. They made their assumptions and they sort of put me in this category of, exiled or whatever you want to call it. I think that's a very, very poor thing to do and not give somebody an opportunity. I did talk about a lot of this on the lives and I tried to put it in context. It's very difficult to do. One thing I did do, just let everybody know this before we switch to something else, because I agree we should move on, is I reached out to 5 or 6 prominent content creators of color here on TikTok that I know through the movement. And I asked each of them, hey, would you like to hop on a private Zoom call? We can try to discuss this. I can share more about what went through my mind when I wrote those things, even though they were wrong. And maybe it'll help provide better context for why someone would even say something like that. And maybe we can go to a place where it's not usually socially acceptable, but someone can be honest and share their lived experience and their observations in a way that's not mean-spirited. The problem is that the way that I worded it was inappropriate and was unnecessary. And for that, I can't take it back. And I feel terrible to have hurt people, which I've said each time I've apologized. And I really sincerely feel that way, because I try to conduct myself in a way that's considerate of others as much as humanly possible. But I fucked up, okay? That's what happened. But it's not going to happen again, I guarantee you. It's not something that's in my mind constantly. It's not my way of being. I take each person, like Martin Luther King said, by the content of their character and no other criteria. And yes, there are people that do stupid shit, and whatever they are, I avoid them, or I disassociate myself with them because they're not trustworthy, and maybe they steal from you, or they otherwise cross you or backstab you. And listen, I don't live in the place of anger and revenge. I live in the place of moving forward. And my dad always told me before he died, he said, hey, Chip, the best revenge is living well. Let it go. And my dad was an ardent Christian. And he believed that, if somebody does wrong you, what Christ taught was to turn the other cheek and accept the person for what they did. Because think of it this way. If there is some good within the person that can otherwise be manifested, and all you do is shame and cancel them, any of that good is not going to be brought to the fore. In fact, you're going to push them further towards behavior that's not the way that they would ideally act. The chance, and use something like this, I would think is the smartest way. Use it as an opportunity to demonstrate how things can potentially be harmful, but then show how there's an opportunity for positive redirection of the energy. And the big thing that got me about this was not so much as forget me, forget Mo Pesci, forget anybody else that got caught up in this sort of vilification and apology demand tour. It angered me that people could not see the bigger picture, that the fact that Palestinians are literally dying, that children are being killed, women are being killed, and people are talking about their feelings and their outrage. And we're very fortunate to be able to sit in a position where we can do that. Some of us don't have the means to even be able to have a conversation on TikTok. They're working 2 or 3 jobs, they're barely making it, and it's getting worse and worse for them. And here we are, people that have time to do this, and you're all this vilification, outrage, and sort of, what do you want to call it, grandstanding. It's like, get over yourself and think of the bigger picture and try to get people to do what they can. I don't like Fiona Ryan at all. I'm not a big fan of Bobby Digital at all. I'm not a fan of Be Blessed at all. But I don't vilify them publicly and spend my day trying to make people hate them or stir bullshit up. I move on and try to do what I can, where it makes sense for me, because the movement is most important. And as I was saying earlier, the first thing I did was reach out to people before this whole second chapter erupted and said to somebody, hey, should I stick around or am I going to be a distraction? Should I kind of step back? It's because that's being considerate of the bigger picture, because the movement is what matters, not any one of us that are in it. And to a person, they said to me, listen, what you said was wrong. You need to apologize for it. But unanimously, they said, your voice is important. You've been talking about this for a long time and you're effective and we like what you say. And so, as a white sort of European background human being, it's not a typical thing to have a lot of people in my shoes know about this the way that I do, and advocate for it as regularly, as strongly, as competently. And it's sad that other people haven't seen that work and they just made their decisions and kind of presume stuff. So, listen, I'm responsible for it. It's my fault, and I have to own and deal with the consequences. I agree with that. But it's also disappointing to see how people chose to behave in the community subsequent to that. It created a huge divide between different groups. It was very unfortunate, and I feel terrible to have caused a stir like that exposed all these quote unquote cleavages in the group. And hopefully people, I think they've gone through it. Hopefully they've come together and put it behind them. But just 2 nights ago, I saw Mo Pesci having to get up on the stage and basically sit there for an hour and just take it on the chin and have to apologize and explain himself away. He's a fucking New Yorker. Okay, if you've never been to New York or the Bronx or Queens, people there are not like soft spoken, right? They say things that are abrasive. They're abrasive by nature. Not that they're mean spirited.
Chip, can I tell you what, I don't know what it is that Mo Pesci has actually said, but I understand this thing that's just like you described. Somebody else said they had him groveling. I'm really puzzled by this, and you're absolutely right. I know New Yorkers. I've got some friends, and they are the most direct, hard-hitting people I know. So for him to be put into that position, if you don't mind, if you're able to, what is it that he's supposed to have said that is so, offensive to some people?
He must have said something when he was on sort of a roll, and he kind of wasn't being as careful about what he said. I think he said something that was considered, what's it called, against women, sort
Chip,
of
we
like
don't hear you that well. Your sound is weird.
something misogynistic. Can everybody else hear me okay? Because one person just said they couldn't hear me.
I can hear you, but there's some background
Okay.
noise.
Okay,
There's
yeah,
some.
I'm outside in
you're
the
out.
street. Let me see if I can
Yeah,
get
we can still hear you though.
Okay, sorry about that, everybody. He said something that was quote unquote deemed to be misogynistic, and he had an issue with one of the content creators. I think her name was Rima, and she felt slighted by Mo to some extent, and so he had to get on there and let her say her piece. He was very gracious in what he did, and I like the fact that Mo did. Mo initially got in trouble, I believe, and I agree with Mo, but I think this just didn't go over well. He said to the folks at the beginning, hey, he said what I said. Listen, I know when people are angry, but our feelings are less important than the bigger picture issues. Let's try to put that aside for now, and let's work on that. We can always focus on that stuff later. And that just caused a huge backlash. And so he was vilified. He was put in like penalty box,
Chip,
which I thought was
yeah,
terribly unfair.
Chip, it was a continuous to what happened with you. The whole thing started because he stood up for you and he said, grow up, people, whatever.
Well, he didn't stand up for me. He stood up for the principles of Islam and how he believed it should be practiced vis-a-vis the
Yes,
situation that we were in.
exactly,
That's what he said.
exactly. But I think this cancel generation is canceling themselves right now. Like they had, these are teenagers. It's a teenager drama. We shouldn't even be listening to or talking about them because right now, if you see them, they're canceling themselves. And just Mo Pesci he's a college professor. He's got an intensive background. He's knowledgeable. He's logical. He's factual. And most importantly, he's realistic. I mean, you look at the stuff around you in a realistic way. What does exist and what does not exist. And a lot of people, they don't want to see reality. They want to see what they believe to be a reality to them.
Well, you know that Mo is way more affected by this than 99% of the people that advocate on TikTok. He's lost, I think, 27 family members, extended family members in Gaza and the West Bank. That is somebody who deserves credibility in and of itself. And in addition to that, he's a very effective speaker. He's articulate.
Absolutely.
He kind of uses reason to argue with people. I think he's a great asset to the movement. And to put him aside like this and vilify him and put him on the spot and make him grovel, I think is highly irresponsible, borderline unacceptable.
It just plays in that. Sorry, it just plays into the hands of the enemy. They're laughing at all of this, and I just hate to think when you and I were in that live earlier, I could just sense it. The fun that the Zionists were having when the so-called pro-Palestine alliance is eating on each other. And this is what it's like. It's like eating your brother, you know. It's like backbiting. You know, we call backbiting eating your brother's flesh, and it just to me it just feels the same. Bloody hell, move on. You know, we're only humans. You're only human. I'm only human. You know, he who cast the first stone, let them be an innocent person. You know, don't throw stones in glass houses. Nobody can say they're a perfect example of humanity. Load of bullshit. Anybody who comes and plays the, you know, sitting on their high horse. I don't have time for things like that. You know, life is too short. Me and you could be dead tomorrow, and all the good works that we did will have come to nothing because somebody decided in their, I was going to say their infinite wisdom, but their lack of wisdom,
Yeah.
okay, that they are an agent of cancel culture. Back to you, brother. Sorry for jumping in, Ali.
Yeah, it's okay. No, it's okay. There's a comment that came through from someone named ByteDance. I'm not sure who this is. It says, "Has Chip divested problematic assessments? Maybe he means investments in his retirement accounts. I'm curious to see if he's all." You know, not that I need to share this, but I will because I'm very transparent about my life. I don't hold any corporate shares of anything in my retirement account or my individual. I don't have any long-term holdings. I sold them all back in 1998, right when the top of the market was. I haven't held a corporate stock since. I don't believe, and listen, it's hard not to be able to make the money that others make when the market goes up. You want to make that money. You want to be, improve your wealth. But at the same time, and listen, you can't always do this, right? Sometimes the stream that we're caught in, it's hard to do everything you'd like to do to kind of, be virtuous. Because we're in a modern industrial society, let's face it. I hate the fact that it's harmful to the environment, it's exploitative for labor, it's a very destructive type of system, it's highly competitive and not very cooperative. I hate that. But some of it we have to be in. It's hard to participate in life here and not have like running water and live in a place that has electricity and all those things. But I can choose not to invest in things that I don't believe in. So hopefully you see that I'm not putting money ahead of my principles when it comes to investing. Because investing is a very nice sort of sanitized word for supporting corporate greed and running roughshod over the world and the workforces of the world. That's what it is. And you can't deny that because that's where the money comes from. Profit comes from exploitation of one thing or another. So yeah, thanks for asking that. And I don't plan to, by the way. And I'm not giving anybody else a hard time if that's what you've chosen to do. That's your choice. Everyone has to make their choices. There are quote unquote funds that are supposed to be socially responsible. It's called ESG, environmental social governance or something like that. I don't even have those because they invest in things like solar farms and windmills, and those things are all the same shit as everything else. Even though it's renewable energy, you got to rebuild those systems, destroy land. The whole system is fucked up. By the way, there is no fixing the system with renewables. In case you're wondering. Okay, we have some people. Dionysus hasn't spoken yet, and then we'll go to Ali. Dionysus, no f bombs, please. I don't want to get you kicked off or us.
Yes, sir. I appreciate having me with you, Chip. I see that you're doing a good conversation with everyone, and it's nice to have a neutral communication. By the way, I assist some of the drama that I can call with Meposhi, I believe his name, and Zubaida and the others. I feel like it's a children or child issue, and the goal is for everyone is supporting the humanity. That's what I believe. We see people dying every day, and we fight like an idiot. That's stupid. Sorry for my words. I appreciate having me here, and I support you 100% and everyone fighting for the humanity. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. I appreciate you being here and for the kind words. There is a comment that keeps recurring that I have seen. Someone just asked me if I've seen it. So I'll address it briefly. I don't have full knowledge about it. So I think that it's something I shouldn't comment on too much. But in this back and forth with Mo, Shaq asked me earlier, like what went down and what was the whole reason for asking him to apologize. There's some personal stuff this is my best understanding, and forgive me for those who know more because I don't know more. But the little bit that I do know is Mo has an ex-wife partner or something like that that somehow got onto TikTok, onto one of these lives and started saying things, I guess, negatively about him to some extent. And supposedly some of his personal life was disclosed during that live that he did not want disclosed to the public or something like that. And so therefore he disclosed something about somebody else's personal life as well. I don't know if it was worse, better. Someone says that he doxed an African American female. I don't have verification of that. Of course, I'm against doxing. There are two things that I don't like about speech. These are the two things that I won't have on my live and don't want to be a part of. I don't think people should be able to say they're going to specifically perform violence on somebody or call for violence on someone. And I don't believe in revealing people's personal information, which puts them in a vulnerable spot that they don't want to have released to the public. So those are the two things that I think should be censored. But everything else, even stuff that's disgusting, I think we should be allowed to say. And I'll have to listen to it from others, which I don't mind doing because I want to say what I want to say. So anyway, I don't believe, I don't know exactly what happened, but I know that he did address the things that were brought up. I don't remember if he did. I haven't recorded. I've recorded maybe 50 hours of lives because I sat on most of them quietly in the background and recorded every single one of them. So I can pull out whatever it is and reference it. So but I don't remember. It was like 3 in the morning when I was watching it, so I was really tired. Anyway, I think Mo at his core is a good fucking guy. He really means well. Does he have rough around the edges? Yeah, sure. So does Donald Trump or whomever else. There's a lot of people that kind of have that bravado personality that's going to eventually let some stuff slip out. But I don't think he does it intentionally to hurt people. I don't think Mo has a mean bone in his body. But everyone has a temper. Everyone has feelings. And when somebody does something to fuck with you, it's not abnormal for people to do something to fuck with somebody back. So I think that cycle unfortunately led to some things that were unfortunate. But hopefully everybody can talk personally and iron it out, which is the mature thing to do. Make the apologies, agree to work together. Even if you don't like somebody, that's politics. There's probably tons of people in Congress that can't stand each other, but on certain bills, they come together because it's politically practical to work together. And then they can go back to fighting and hating on each other. And we should do the same here in this community, I don't hate anybody. I really don't, including people on the Israeli side. I don't hate them. I really vehemently disagree with their point of view to the extent that I find it despicable that somebody would support that. But if someone was trying to harm them, I would protect them from being harmed because I don't believe it's good to hurt civilians, even if it's somebody you completely disagree with. Now, soldiers, that's a different thing. If somebody's pointing a gun at somebody, they're fair game because they're trying to be a combatant. So, okay, I think Dionysus hasn't had a chance to speak yet. Welcome, Dionysus. Please, no bad language, my friend, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, there's no Zaz around. I just want to make everybody aware that what we're seeing, these sycophants and these celebrities and the drama they're causing is a tactic that was employed by COINTELPRO back in the days of Malcolm X and MLK and even PETA, an animal rights organization. And what COINTELPRO did is they would implant their people into movements who became people of influence in these movements. And then they would use their own cultural or personal biases to start fracturing that group from the inside. So people just need to be aware of that. And like you said earlier, sorry, I'm in the middle of installing a filter underneath my sink. So
It's okay.
what you said earlier about keeping our eyes on what the main goal is.
Yeah.
And if anybody doesn't know what the main goal is, just like the Palestinians live in apartheid and oppression, what we see happening on the college campuses today is a little preview of what we're going to see later on if we don't put aside our petty differences.
Yeah.
And all realize that when they take away rights of students who pay and stay in debt for the rest of their lives to stay in these universities, when they take away their free speech that they actually paid for to have, ours is soon to come. So these petty differences and these people who are splintering and fracturing this group from the inside, those people need to be, never mind publicly, whatever, just forget about them. Ignorance is the best weapon for these people. Don't even talk about them right now. Don't talk about them tomorrow. Don't talk about them ever again. Because it just feeds the fuel, like Shaq said a little bit ago.
Sure.
It just feeds the fuel of the schmucks on the other side eating popcorn over it. So
No doubt. Do you think that any of the people in that movement that have been stirring that stuff up maybe might be agents of agent provocateurs that are somehow involved in the other side of this?
No. I mean, I can. All right. So in my involvement, in my experience in movements since Tibetan freedom back in 1999, 7 to 8 times out of 10, that is precisely the case. Also, the same 7 times out of 10, the people causing drama who appear to be against one another are most of the time working together, causing a drama show, just like the politicians do. Same bird, different wing bullshit, caca, right? It's controlled opposition type thing. It's the divide and conquer, bread and circus all added into one. Because now we get the divide and conquer, and then we got the bread and circus Jerry Springer show, which all Americans love. Because it's like no more. We don't need to turn on the TV for daytime TV no more. We got it in our hand 24/7 on TikTok.
Yeah.
So it's like, what do you think most of these daytime Americans are drawn to? That type of drama. So it's like a third of people in your audience right now just love the drama. A third of the people are our allies, and the other third, we already know who they are.
Yeah.
So we
Speaking
got,
of which, if you're one of the third that Dionysus is referring to, who supports the other side of the arguments we're making, you're welcome to come up, and you will be given a chance to say your piece. You won't get muted. You'll be given respect, and that's what I require of my panel. I've been accused of being pro-Zionist for letting people speak, for gosh sakes. But the cool thing is that we get to hear each other's points of view, and we can learn from each other sometimes. Believe it or not, I have learned some things by listening to people, which I think is the right thing to do. But I've also heard a lot of bullshit that I try to walk people into a corner and sort of checkmate the situation, which is my technique. Not everybody likes to do it that way. I understand they like to bash people or call them names. I just think that's counterproductive. Anyway, so if there is anybody in the comments, and the other thing I'd like to ask people to do, if you don't mind, take a little pause here. We are about 45 minutes into this, is to please invite some other people who you know. And the way you do that is to hold the screen down for just a second, and a list of all of your mutual friends will pop up. So I'm going to do that too and see if I can do it. If everybody doesn't mind, and your name will appear in the comments if you do that, so we'll be able to see who's doing that. It's funny, sometimes you invite people who don't like you, and they come on and start bashing you, because I have some friends that are just sort of contacts from other lives. So we'll see if anybody pops up. I got my thick skin on, so I don't mind.
yeah, I'm allergic to tomatoes, so I'll drop. I usually break out in insults. If there's I'll just
All
drop.
right.
They come up, but
Nice
yeah, I
to
just
hear.
want to let people
Nice to
make them aware of that. We got to keep our eyes on the main issue here. Like, just like the Palestinians have been fighting for their rights for 75 years, we're now like on the verge of looking like that. So before we get to that extreme, we need to start speaking out for one another and drop our
All
petty
right.
differences.
Thanks, Dionysus. I appreciate you coming on.
And I think these protests in the
You
colleges
drop me, so
are,
it's better for your life.
Okay, you got it.
yeah, these
Well,
these
real quick, before you go, Frederico, I want
yeah.
to bring you on just one sec. Maz in the comments said something that I was curious to hear about. Now, Maz, if it's more appropriate to communicate it to me privately on Telegram, feel free to do so. But if you think it's something that's worthy of discussion here, she mentioned that, did I hear what happened with Fiona Ryan? And my answer is no. I do know originally that she was arrested for some things that she posted on Twitter as well as on TikTok about Jewish people and transgender people or something to that effect. And Britain has different laws. They don't have the same free speech permissions that the United States does, and certain speech can be deemed harmful to the public or something like that. So she got some charges for that. I don't know what happened with it since then, but that's all I know. She was the one who, I didn't know her at all. And I made a video that got a lot of views saying that she had been arrested for advocating for Palestine. I didn't know the rest of the story at the time I made the video. So, and I didn't know Fiona. And I tried to get to know her and tried to connect with her, and we'll put a bunch of olive branches, but unfortunately it just hasn't been a good connection. So I wish her well, as I do anybody who advocates for Palestine. The one thing that I found very frustrating, and I don't like that anybody does this, if you take advantage of a cause to raise money to pay your personal bills, I think that's pretty bad. I think that's just not the way that I want to see people doing things. And anyway, that's the sense I got when it comes to the type of things that she does with her community. Which, whatever, everyone's got to do their thing their way, but that left me with kind of a bad taste in my mouth. But she's her own person. But Maz, did you want to say anything about that? Because I'm not sure what you meant. I didn't see. It says very sad for her family. I didn't see what you said at first, though, Maz. I apologize. Did something happen to her? Did she go to jail or something, or did she pass away, or did she get off TikTok, or what happened? I see it says very sad about her family. Can someone clue me in? I apologize. I didn't see that. Last night I saw her mad at TikTok for taking her video down.
I think she's fine. I'm sure I saw a recorded video, perhaps only yesterday. So she seems to be
Okay.
fine. But I know she's on.
Maz says that she got rearrested and banned from TikTok. Is that banned from TikTok or all social media? So, again, I don't agree with that, by the way. I think taking people off of platforms is wrong unless they say something that's violent. But I don't live in the UK where the laws are different. Anyway, like I said before, if she's promoting violence or she's doxing people, other than that, I don't care. You know, I don't like what she says, but I'm not going to try to kick her off. But I don't know what happened. If anybody knows what she said that prompted that, was it the same in original content or was it other stuff that she did since then?
No, I
Again,
think it's to do with that she gets her children, her son, who's I think 14 or something like that, he's gone on lives, and the Zionist lobby have made reports that she's radicalizing her children. And so the child protection services, social services have got involved. They're trying to, having meetings about is she a suitable mother and all of that. This is all a Zionist attack on somebody's personal credibility. Um,
yeah,
She's very powerful.
are you allowed to bring underage people below 18 onto your lives as a host?
I don't think you are, but he did it in his own right. He did it. I think because he speaks openly in school as well. You see, so he's very pro-Palestine in his school, and the school made a report. Unfortunately, our schools, and the same with over there where you are as well, they're
Yeah.
very woke, pro-leftist agenda. They will cow down to whatever the regime demands, and they've got this thing in their head that they have to report people. They've forgotten that they're there to teach and not to snitch on people, you know. And we have this thing in the UK called Prevent, which is a referral to a government body to supposedly help prevent radicalization and terrorism and spot the signs. And a
Okay.
simple thing like having a conversation or asking a question can be deemed as an issue that needs investigation. So it's a way of sort of silencing people. It's very draconian. I mean, everybody thinks we're quite free here. We're actually very draconian.
Yeah,
We're not far
dangerous.
behind the North Koreans here. I think we're the
Wow.
second or third most surveilled country in the world with the
All right.
amount of
I
CCTV.
promised Federico that he would get a chance to jump in. So thank you, Shaq. Federico, welcome.
Yeah. Hey, Shaq, how are you? Good to see you, brother. Chip.
See you always,
I
brother. Federico is a legend.
thank you, buddy.
Guys,
Thank you.
excuse me. We just need to know who you're talking about. Who's in prison or who wasn't released.
Her
We
name is
don't understand.
Fiona Ryan.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. And I wanted to share briefly, if it's okay. I was having a conversation with a family member yesterday. It was a very good conversation, and we were talking about the bigger picture issues. And this is a family member that most of my family thinks I'm an absolute nut. They think that I'm just off. I may have to go in a second because a friend of mine, I promised him I'd meet him to go for a walk. He's having some tough times, to say the least. And by the way, just not that it matters, but for those of you who think I hate Jewish people, this is a friend of mine who's Jewish, who's going through some terrible times. So I'm doing everything I can to try to help him because he needs help. And if I don't get anything out of it, it's just he needs help. So I'm trying to be a good friend. Anyway, so I need to go with him because he's very, very broken right now and he needs support. Anyway, but I'll stay for a few more minutes. So in the conversation, it was about the frustration that the political process seems to be broken with money. We talk about this all the time, but my family doesn't usually acknowledge this. But in this conversation, I think things have gotten to a point where everyone's sort of waking up and going, damn, this whole system is so messed up. It's kind of beyond repair. And then, she asked me, well, what can we do about it if we can't vote our way out of it? And of course, that I told her about my Telegram that has Action for Change with the number 4. And hopefully people will check that out. There's a link in my bio. And what I've talked about is the blueprint, the roadmap that could be used in some escalatory process to get the power structure, the powers that be, so to speak, to divert or change some of the things that are going on, hopefully a lot. And, listen, I'm not advocating for it because I'm no ringleader. I'm not trying to promote unrest or, espionage or whatever it's called. I'm not seditious. But I do think that the policies and procedures and tax policy and finance and industry and so many other things are worthy of condemnation and need to change. And I think everybody sees it. The question is how to get there. So I talk about it. It's a combination of similar to a labor union. What do workers do when they can't get past management? They have to go on strike. They have to use some threat of withdrawal of their services. And of course, we all have that in common for the whole country. We're workers for different companies. What if a large number of us decided to basically do that? Most companies can't work without their workers. So, but the problem is what do you do to pay your bills, right? So there has to be like a general fund, like a union has, and it's called social support, or stuff like that. So communities have to come together at the community level, but in a decentralized way, so they can't like cut the head off the snake. There's a lot of heads on the snake, and do those kinds of things. Now, what else can be done? People can stop buying anything but absolute essentials. So what do you need? You need food, you need water, you need clothing, and you need a place to stay. But you don't need all that other shit. You don't, having the internet, I guess you want to have that, but you don't need television. You don't need to have memberships to this. You don't have to play golf, tennis, fill in the fucking blank, whatever your thing is. You don't have to do that. They're extras. And so if people would just do that, enough of us would just do that, that would break the back of the corporations, because they require us to keep their sales going, which keeps their investors going, blah, blah, blah. And on top of that, like we're seeing right now at college campuses, and again, it's a risk because you can get arrested, you can get beaten up, maybe worse, you can maybe get unalived, or you could end up in jail, or some combination of all of those things. So I don't blame anybody who doesn't want to take on those risks, but at some point, if we want to make life better for the kids and the grandkids, which they're going to come into, I think, a pretty tough deal if nothing changes, so at some point we're going to have to put our ass on the line. People are going to have to step outside their lane and just say, you know what, I got to do something outside of myself. It's just got to be done. And I don't know, most people may not do that. We have the left-right divide, which is manufactured by the establishment. The whole media system is geared towards dividing people. Somebody mentioned bread and circus earlier. That was Dionysus. NFL football, Netflix, the whole nine. It keeps people just busy enough and just distracted enough that they're not willing to get together and talk. And there's a lot of hatred between people. That's the petty shit that people talked about that has to be put aside. People have to stop hating on Trump, hating on Biden. They're irrelevant. The political system is basically bought off. It's a bunch of marionettes that dance around and act as if we have a choice. But if you swap out one dancing doll for the other, there's still a wire going up to the people controlling that. And those are the people we got to get to, the people holding the marionettes that pay the bills. So that, plus the national security, the permanent deep part of the government that never changes despite administration and different politicians coming and going, that's the power structure. You got your corporate influence, money in politics, advocacy groups like AIPAC and the NRA, all these groups that if the public wants something, the politicians vote for the interests that provide the money, not that benefit the public or their constituents. And that's become entirely the way that the government operates now. So in terms of putting our bodies in place, think of it this way. These college kids are only going on the courtyard in a campus. They're not stopping the university, and yet they're getting beat to a pulp. We're going to have people, if this is going to work, I believe, they're going to have to not only withhold their labor, not only buy essentials and stay firm with that, provide social support to their neighbors. If somebody's about to go under, you help them a little bit. And then you put your body in the physical space of the machine. There's a circulatory system that runs these economies, and the only language these people speak, these sociopathic accumulators, these hoarders of money, is money. They only understand money. It's return on capital. The society is going to have to find a way to stop, like put something in the spoke of the gears and freeze those gears. And I think that's going to be a combination of these things. If we put our bodies in front of the arteries of commerce, we block the roads, the highways, the ports, airports, bridges, you name it. If it moves something, it stops. They're not going to run over 600,000 people. They're not going to be able to jail 600,000 people. They're not going to be able to jail 60 million people, or whatever the numbers end up being. But it has to be big enough that it makes a big enough difference and does have that effect in part or whole. Then there need to be a very specific series of demands that accompany the process of freezing the system. And if they don't acquiesce to that, the freezing doesn't stop until they do. Now, there's going to be very, very, very violent and sudden repression, as we're seeing right now, just with a small number of college protesters. They're beating the hell out of them, spraying them with tear gas, putting them in jail, suspending them from school, blah, blah, blah. It's what the establishment does. And then what happens is that the public that is against what the establishment is doing sees that violence, and it coalesces more people around a movement. Now, I'm for nonviolence. And usually it's the establishment that commits the violence. I'm not for anybody harming property or people ever. So don't get me wrong. I'm for peaceful, nonviolent, hopefully negotiation without any kind of civil disobedience, but if necessary, assembly and civil disobedience. I believe that is the path to change. The problem is getting people organized and in the awareness phase, which is part of what we're doing here and elsewhere, which is why they don't want these apps running, because this awareness is spreading. And that Telegram group that I have on my Telegram channel, that's what it talks about, these exact issues, like how to organize, how to decentralize the movement, how to get local communities to see the light, how to get people out of their lane, their comfort zone, how to get them to see these mechanisms of power that are holding back the changes that are so desperately needed. So getting money out of politics, having term limits, maybe restructuring the way that the governing system works, maybe having a citizens council at the top rather than a president within the executive branch that then directs things in a way that benefits the community, and they rotate every 180 days and they're selected by the people or something like that, where money you would make it illegal to contribute to somebody and or to accept money, and that would carry either a life sentence without parole or a capital offense, because it is the number one rot that causes all the other problems, and it has to be completely eliminated for the system to work towards the public. We have free education, free maternity leave for women who have children, adequate childcare, adequate nutrition, living a reasonable living situation for all people, balanced income, so we don't have people that have 150 billion fucking dollars while people they can't even pay their basic bills and feed their kids formula. These are the things that need to happen. And those exact configurations can be argued and modified. They need to be succinct and very specific, and there needs to be a transition model in place for if and when these things relent. That's my point of view. And now you could think that I'm crazy. I've been told that I'm in outer space, I'm on Mars. That guy, the handsome liberal Tim, who has a great sort of call-in show, he believes in retail politics. I don't believe, and I'm convinced of this, and I hope I'm wrong, that the existing political system can be changed from within it, because it's been bought off. It doesn't matter who comes in. You're not going to get a better person, even if you get the most sincere, uncorruptible human being. They come into a viper pit, and they're going to get bit, because the people that control the flow of money and the movement through the process of committee assignments, etc., they punish people who try to be virtuous and help their constituents, and they reward people who take the money and screw their constituents. So therefore, what are they going to do? Even if you're a good person and you come in and you really want to help, you maybe can do some things like set up a community center or get some money for a new bridge repair or whatever. So you do those things because that's what you can get done. And you kind of say from a pragmatic standpoint, I got to go along with this other shit because of the party system, but I can at least get something done. So you get caught in this terrible position of compromising your values, and you just have to go along. You're like, well, whatever, what am I supposed to do? This is the system I'm in. That's why the system has to change. Now, so few people see this right now, and they believe that if they just get their president in or just stop the other team, that things will somehow work out. But as Shaq said, they're two wings of the same bird. I call it the uniparty, because in essence, they mostly, not all the time, but mostly do the bidding of the wealthy class, the national security state, the surveillance state, the oligarchy, and the transnational militarism that we're seeing play out right now. And who gets that money? That $100 billion doesn't go to Ukraine. Some of it does, but most of it goes to weapons manufacturers. Well, they make a profit. They charge obscene margins on the stuff they sell. Who gets to keep that profit? You and me? Nope. High net worth investors who have shares, family offices, large net worth investors, big corporations, all the investor class. That's where everything goes. Now we have centralized commerce where the entire landscape, go into any major town in America, and what do you see? Chain store after chain store, Lowe's, Home Depot, Chipotle, KFC, McDonald's, Burger King, you name it, it's centralized. The money goes to Wall Street. It doesn't stay in the community. That has to change. We have to relocalize commerce. We have to start using less resources. Our system is going to become a more minimized lifestyle, which is good actually, because we get away from materialism, we focus on community, and everyone's going to be more satisfied. Yeah, you may not make $80,000 a year, but you don't need $80,000 a year. You only need the basic things in life, and when we put our time and energy into things that are more meaningful, supporting each other, helping each other, being altruistic, not self-aggrandizing, we're happier as human beings. All that materialism, and you'll hear people talk about this. I just saw a video by Brett Favre, who talked about all the things he's bought and all the stuff he has and how it just didn't mean shit. And what meant something to him, and this is not my path, but for him it meant finding a relationship with Christ. That's what has provided him with meaning in his life. Now, I'm not saying that's for everybody, and I'm not saying that the Christian religion is the path, but for him, that was his choice and what's providing him a more fulfilling, more meaningful path in his life. And I think we all need that more than anything. We need to take the good that's within us and provide it to the benefit of the whole and help others who don't have something that they can't do. If there are people that physically can't function, we help them. And if there's people that are exceptionally talented, we redirect their efforts towards making a difference for the community and for the public, not to get insanely rich. And there are going to be people that want to self-accumulate, right? Let's be fair. It's going to happen. That's how some people are wired. But we need to have governing mechanisms so it doesn't get out of control. We need to have sensible ecological regulations so the system doesn't fuck things up for the next couple generations and all the other animals and humans start to die off. That's craziness, right? So this is how I see the landscape. I'm not even for industrialization, as crazy as that sounds, but just like Israel, it's here, right? It's probably not practical that it's going to go away anytime soon. The question is, how do we start turning the rudder on this very big boat or very big train that's running off the fucking tracks at record speed? And the first step is to show people that the train is moving that way and that there is a rudder and that there's not enough of us on the rudder pushing back against the few people who are holding it right now. But with the numbers, we can do it. But without the numbers, with the division, just like we're seeing here on TikTok among the pro-Pally community, it's the same shit writ large in the United States and Europe. There are a lot of people, mostly in the US, that hate each other. You know, the conservatives have all the guns and they want to put their guy in, regardless of what the votes are. They think it's all rigged. And the Democrats are deathly afraid of the autocracy that they think Trump wants to put in place. And it's a complete shit show. And meanwhile, the oligarchy is skimming ever more amounts of money while they print money to run the government, and it's debasing the currency. So the average person with less than 150, 200 grand is fucked. If you got $20 million, it can dilute by half and you're still doing okay. So they're laughing all the way to the bank while we fight with each other. And while the left-right divide goes on, guess who's making bank? They bring the Obamas of the world to the front. Change is coming to America. Everyone gets all excited. Guess what happens? Nothing. He bombs the shit out of people, deports millions of people back to Central and South America and Mexico, and he increases the money that goes from the Treasury to the banking and financial system so that all those rich fucks get all their money back that they lost because making bad bets. And you and I have to hold the bill. If you think that's fair and decent and you want to live with that, you think that's going to be good for your kids, you're in a different mental space than I am. So the slow and hard work of politics is right on the ground. It's where I'm sitting right now. And my job and your job, if you care about this, and anybody else who is aware or gives a shit about the future, is to go do the difficult and uncomfortable conversations. And yes, it's going to put you potentially, just like the Jewish people who have the courage to speak out against Zionism. It's very similar. You have to speak out. We have to speak out against the system, against the status quo. More people than ever right now are opening up to that, which is great, but they don't know what to do. They feel helpless. Well, what do? We can't vote our way out. You have to explain to them that this alternative path is a possibility. Now, is it likely? No. Do I believe it's going to happen? Probably not. But maybe there'll be a war. Maybe something very disruptive will happen that we don't anticipate that will create a more viable path for some of these changes to occur. Or it may get worse. I don't know. Or there may be some unexpected change. Maybe there is going to be some kind of organized revolution because of the anger about this situation. I don't know. You can't predict the future. But I do feel that the time is better than it's ever been for people to step outside of the lane I talked about and to do something, anything to make a difference. Because they realize this ain't right. This is some serious bullshit. And it's bigger than just Israel-Gaza. It's writ large. Does anybody disagree with this? Does anybody feel differently? Am I completely out to lunch? Because I've been thinking about this for several decades.
No, and this is the right thinking. That is the only realistic thing if you look at it from a realistic point of view. And if you look at it in a different way, you're hopeful, but you're not realistic.
Yeah, right now, if you go to TikTok, if you leave this live, which I hope you don't, but maybe when it's finished, if you scroll through other lives right now on TikTok, you're going to see at least 6 to 8 different lives that are taking the position that Trump is the only solution to save America. And others are saying, if you vote for Trump, you're an idiot. He's going to destroy democracy. There'll never be another election, blah, blah, blah. It's all misdirection. It's all divisive. It's meant that way on purpose. People are goaded into it. They're not like operatives of the government doing it, I don't think. They're just conditioned into thinking from that vantage point. They're not thinking north and south. They're thinking left and right. And we have to redirect the thinking to look at who the true exploiters are. Absent that knowledge, people aren't going to be willing to put their effort in because they believe it's fruitless because they don't even see the problem.
Exactly. Well, Chip, I wanted to earlier. I got kind of you had to respond to something, but I want to address the infiltrators in the colleges after the. If you remember the story of the skunk spray that happened in the first protest.
Yeah.
So yesterday I was watching a little kid of these college campuses, and they mentioned that, and they are very aware of, and they have like they have a watch out for infiltrators. The second thing I wanted to address is about making money on TikTok, speaking for the Palestinian cause or whatever. I believe if you spend a lot of your time standing on a panel, as long as you're telling the truth, you're not making up stories, and if you make money, why not? I don't understand why people have to go after somebody that spends hours and hours and hours and hours talking about your cause, and you look at him, he's making money. Why don't you look at the other side, that for the speech, while the Zionists are paying people to come up here and speak for them, and if one's speaking for the cause and makes a couple of dollars, they look at him like, I believe, if you're here talking and like well, I was hearing you last time. The amount of hours you spend on TikTok, you probably made less than $1 per hour, or and that is not fair, Chip. I believe that and I ask everybody, support Chip in any way, shape he can. He spends hours and hours educating all of us, and even if you do, charity work for a Salvation Army, your expenses are paid, and that is, I think, people that criticize anyone that is making money out here by talking, telling the truth, and spreading facts. I don't mind. I 100% that they make money. The
Yeah,
third,
I think, well, let me add my 2 cents to that, please. I agree with you that it's fair. Here's where I draw the line, though. If somebody's leveraging the cause, saying they're going to raise money for the cause, in other words, they're going to send money off to help the people that are suffering, and they're not clear about anything they may choose to take from that. And it's not abnormal for fundraisers to take something for their efforts, because like was just said, if you put in X amount of time, something should come. Nobody here who works their job is accused of working for money, because that's why they do it. They work it to pay their bills. Well, work takes different forms in life. This is one way to work, and it's if you're good at it and you communicate well and you can bring lively discussions and inform people of important things, and it makes a difference, then that has value, and value usually gets compensated to some degree. And I don't do any of this with any of that in mind. But I do have links in my bio that I rarely promote, but they are there, and some people have used them to make some donations, which I genuinely appreciate. But it's never first and foremost on my mind. None of this stuff. What I really want to see, quite frankly, which would be the best payment, is for there to be an immediate ceasefire, for the Palestinians to get their own state, to have self determination, for this crazy international finance system to be broken up, for the negative influences of Zionism and the U.S. empire to be dissolved, and for us to all have better lives and have there be less war, more peace, and more productive community-based living. That's what I want. And that's the only reason I do any of this shit, because I think it's that important, and we're not going in the right direction to get any of that stuff. We're going in the wrong direction.
it's fair. It's fair for what's fair. Like I said, if you promote, like the people that said they're gonna send money, that's lying to us. And people that stands here like waste their time, it's fair. It's more than fair. Something else before we close, Chip. What I want to discuss, because lately that has been around, the Iranian response on Israel. Is it a movie? Is it a real thing? Is it a lot of people on TikTok are lost, and I think they need to understand the balance of power between these two countries. And I've had people that even from our movement coming after me for speaking about realistically about the power of Iran, and you're pro-Iranian. They forgot, everything that was done by Iran, and now they wanna blame Iran for Iran attacked so they can cover up the Shifa hospital massacre. Iran attacked so they can divert eyes from Gaza. And these are all rumors that are spread by the Zionists. And I think we should have a way of explaining to people what really happened. We all looking for our future. So if we look at stuff realistically and we analyze it, we may be right, we may be wrong, and sometimes we hope to be wrong. But but we stuff that like this, we should address, we should talk about. I don't know when you have time if you want to do that. I think it's an important issue to address.
Yeah, I think the next phase is going to be Israel versus Lebanon / Hezbollah. I think that's the next stage of this, because the Netanyahu government, if the U.S. pressures them not to go into Rafah the way that they say they're going to, which I think is a possibility, Netanyahu can't afford to have the conflict come to a halt. His whole group of people are going to be out of power in a heartbeat if they call new elections. So for selfish reasons, he may expand the war, which is very dangerous to all of us. But Netanyahu, I think, is a maniac. He's no better than the mustache guy in terms of the way he thinks and the way he chooses to behave, and very self-serving.
And I think we should explain in the same too the power that each group in Lebanon has.
Yeah.
And if Israel does attack Lebanon or declare war on Lebanon, what the consequences that would be looking at the past to predict the future.
Federico, there's someone named Mike G in the comments said something. I wanted to see if you have a response or want to add your 2 cents. He said in all caps, Mike G said, "Bring the hostages home." What comes to mind when you hear that?
I say negotiate and take them back. It's simple. They've been negotiating. If Netanyahu doesn't want them, we're not going to force them on you. Just negotiate and pick them up.
Okay, and the other thing I wanted to ask you is, this is fair from Mike G, if he wants to answer in the comments, or Mike, you're welcome to come up if you request. I'd love to bring you up and share the conversation. You'll be treated with respect and civil dialogue. The question I want to ask is, Mike, do people who want to see the Israeli hostages freed, which I do, what do you think about the number of prisoners that are being held in Israel and the nature of what they either did or did not do to get there? Should those who did not do much, if anything, who are being held, a lot of people view them as, basically political prisoners or hostages, should they be released as well? Is that a fair request, or do you think that's apples and oranges? And by the way, Sam, if you want to jump in and share your views, you can too. But
I think it's legit. Clear the prisons, every single one of them. If you have no civil criminal charges, you should be cleared out. If you weren't picked up for stealing, for doing any act of resistance, anything considered against the occupation forces, it must be included in that deal and must be cleared out of the prison. Israeli goes up, pick up left and right. They they go by numbers. It's the same. How many people they unalived in Gaza is the same way. Like since October 7th until now, 5,000 Palestinians were picked up from the street just for walking by the street and put in prison so they can leverage the negotiation. And
can you explain to the group what administrative detention is?
They look at you, you look kind of don't like you. They decide, one soldier looks at the other, looks at you and say, hey, what do you think we should charge them with? Hey, let's say terrorism. And then they both agree that they want to pick you up and take you to their commander and say, this guy is whatever. We don't have any proof. So administrative detention. They keep them in, no evidence, no lawyer, no court date, and they keep them, and they keep extending it. Like they keep you for a month, then they give you another 3 months, then they give you another 5 months, and by the time you get to see a judge, 10 years has gone by of your life waiting for a court date.
Yeah, Mike said something interesting in response. I think it's just reasonable. He said, I think we need to know the reasons they're being held on an individual basis, which none of us know. So I think what's fair to know, Mike, and this is just my understanding. And again, I'm not on the monopoly on the truth, but this is just my understanding, having researched it for a long time. Let me give you an example of a situation where people would be taken in, mainly young people, unfortunately, under the age of 20 or 18, for quote unquote, potentially being a threat to Israel. So let's say, for example, someone threw a rock out of a window and it came from a series of adjacent houses, and the IDF's not sure who did it or which house it came from, but they got hit by the rock. They will enter each of the homes and grab anybody of fighting age and take them from the home and stick them in a paddy wagon and drive them back to Israel and hold them in administrative detention because none of them will admit who did it and they all stay in jail indefinitely. That's one example. Other examples are when the IDF randomly goes into houses late at night just to terrorize Palestinian families in the West Bank. Once in a while, they'll just grab somebody who may mouth off or spits at the soldier or whatever. They'll take them in on the same thing, and they'll charge the person who spit at them with some crazy crime and convict them for a 9 or 12-month sentence, which of course is absurd. But they call any resistance to soldiers terrorism. Even if you laugh or smile or spit at somebody, that's considered an offense in the West Bank versus soldiers. If you like a tweet by somebody that's critical of Israel, that's an offense, arrestable offense. If you have on your social media someone like me and you've ever been in their live, you get picked up and taken in. This is the kind of stuff that people suffer through it's all political prisoners for the most part. Now, there are some people who commit acts of violence against Israel. I understand that under those circumstances, Israel's perception is perhaps more reasonable or valid. But even so, these are people that are resisting brutal occupation. And either it's Israeli territory and they get full rights as citizens, or it's an occupation and they're illegally occupying and need to leave. It can't have it both ways. Somebody named Dagnos says lies. So Dagnos, I know a lot of times you use a general statement that's lies. So why don't you explain to us what is incorrect about that and what's inaccurate? Because that is my understanding of how it works. And again, I'm telling you, just because that's my understanding doesn't make me right. It just means that the work that I've done has indicated that as a rational conclusion. So I'm interested to hear other people. So Sam, welcome. Did you want to contribute? I have to go shortly, by the way.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I must say that, I must acknowledge your work, Chip. I must acknowledge your work and your insight and how you are moving fast within the journey of consciousness in the whole world. So I commend you, first of all, and I say thank you. And for the prisoners, Palestinian prisoners, they are hostages in the same way. And that was the reason for the Gazan people to have hostages so they can exchange them. And, the administrative detention is against the law anyway, because
Sammy, brother, address them as Palestinians of Gaza, not Gazans, please.
Yeah,
I'm not-
Palestinians
yeah.
of Gaza. Well, you can police my words as much as you like, I understand.
I'm not
I
policing
just
you. I'm not
use-
policing your word. I'm not policing. Yeah.
Yeah, I used the word Gazans because I didn't want to use a word that will close the broadcast of our brother Chip. That's the whole idea. It is not to undermine anybody, I am from there. So, and I understand that we have so many prisoners. Yeah, we have so many prisoners over the years from 1948 till now. Almost no house in Palestine did not suffer that one or two or three members of that house were imprisoned, and they consider the Palestinians altogether, as they said, the human animals, and they can deal with them as they wish.
Sammy, can I ask you a question real quick?
Yes.
Are you encouraged by the strong support that many college students are showing by protesting all over the United States and getting arrested?
Well, it's amazing, actually. This new generation could understand that now they are not free in their own countries, and there are foreign entities are manipulating their destiny and their future. And that's why I think the same what happened during Vietnam War, and Columbia University exactly started that, objecting that unjust war, which later on most of the politicians in America said that we did a mistake, as they did a mistake in Iraq and Afghanistan. And this new generation is smarting out every propaganda in America, and they understand that these foreign entity will ride on them, and they will ride and design their futures, and they have the right to do that, and they are doing it. And actually, we are not only moving, we are thrilled that this young generation does not understand borders. This young generation understands the humanity, and they want to live without conflict. And all of these assault on the people of Palestine affected and hurt their humanity. So they are rebelling for their own humanity and the humanity of others, because it is shared humanity. And as in law, they call it omnia ergis. So for me, I look at them with admiration and with all respect.
Can I ask you one more question, Sammy? Can I ask you one more question?
Yes.
So, in the conversations that I've had with many people who are pro-Israel, especially Zionists who are from Israel, who are rather amped up about 10/7, I've asked them many times, what is it that motivates the behavior of the resistance / T word that we've seen? And the three things that I often offer them is, one, is it Islamic jihad and or sort of a caliphate? Is it abject hatred of Jews in general? Or is it based upon the dispossession of land and ongoing oppression and occupation? What do you think is the primary motivator behind the things we've been seeing as far as resistance?
Well, the easiest answer for that, it is like A, B, C. Then I pick C, which is that because they are dispossessed of their land and their humanity at large. And I never heard that these people said that we want to establish the caliphate. I never heard of them a word. They uttered a word against Jews. And actually, in their understanding, they respect Jews. And that's why there are so many Jews against occupation. And we see them, they are our brothers and sisters, going in the streets, in everywhere, and they are vilifying the occupation, and they say, you are affecting us, don't talk in our name, don't commit in our name what we said, never again, it means never again. So you are doing it in our name, and we don't want you to do it in our name. Don't fuel your assault in those people who are marginalized, dispossessed, and apartheid established against them. Don't use our name in doing that. And this is the position of the young generation mostly all over the world. They don't want to see such atrocity that hurts their hearts and their conscience. And so many people of them, they say, well, I cannot see the children in Gaza and look at my child. And you will find a single mother, 24 years old, and saying, I see my children, and I see the children in Palestine, and I cannot imagine that this is happening to my children. So if there is something good out of this, it is the humanity which is prevailing, the humanity in the whole world. So for me, I know that for a fact because I am from the region, I am from Palestine, and I know that never ever the Palestinians said we want to establish the caliphate. We didn't hear that. Never ever we heard that the Palestinians, we hate Jews. In the contrary, Jews were living in Palestine with the Palestinians, neighbors, and with good relations and cooperation. And the Jews saying, no, you are turning up our lives upside down because of your Zionist colonial settler project. And this is how it is. This is my answer, Chip, my brother.
Do you think in 1940s Germany that the Jewish people hated all Germans, or did they hate the Third Reich that was the governing entity and ideology that decided to oppress and eventually try to work and exterminate them?
Well, actually, you know, I will answer the same answer of Norman Finkelstein. Norman Finkelstein said that my mother is a decent woman, but when they were in Auschwitz and something happened to the German, she said that I wish that some German will go with us, will die with us. And he said that does not mean that we hate the German.
Didn't she mean the schmatzis and not the average German citizen?
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So there's a difference between a German civilian and a schmatzi, right?
Yeah, of course.
There's
So
a
this
difference
is what
between a Jewish person and a hardcore Zionist, right?
Yes, of course. This is
There we
what
go.
Norman,
That's the point.
Professor Norman, saying in eloquent words, because he is objecting such atrocity to be happened in his name as well. And of course, he just gives you an example from his own life and his own experience as he is a survival from the Holocaust. So as well, the Palestinians, I don't think, you know, I or anybody from my people would wish that a Jewish child would be hurt. If I find a Jewish child need a help, I will help him. He's my child as well. So no, it's beyond this discussion that will the Palestinian wish that the Jewish will be extinguished or exterminated. That never happened in the mind of any, as mothers, as fathers, as grandfathers. The Palestinian people are very loving, and this is what moved the whole world when they saw the Palestinian loving and steadfastness and their morality. And this is one of the reasons that the world moved with the Palestinians, to see such character and humbleness and cooperation and the humanity in the Palestinians. While the propaganda of the Zionism is to demoralize the Palestinians and to dehumanize from the Jewish people, saying, please differentiate between us as Jews and Zionists are Christian. They are not Palestinian. They are not Jewish. They are a Christian. Most of the Zionists, the Muslims, are Christians. They are not even Jews. Biden is not a Jew, but he says, I am a Zionist.
Yeah, the interesting thing for the audience is that, and you may know this already, but there are far more Christian Zionists in the United States that adhere to evangelical Christianity than there are in the entire world who are Jewish. And those groups raise incredible amounts of money and provide incredible political support that provides weapons to settlers so they can go in and violently dispossess and unalive Palestinians, which is horrific, at the protection of the IDF. And also they take tours to Israel. They also raise money on that. And the reason they do this, and I have to give credit to Sheila, she sent me a great video, which hopefully people can see. Maybe I can post the link to it. But it shows how fervent these Christian evangelicals are who consider themselves Zionists. And they unquestionably support Israel. And why do they do that? Because their faith tells them that in order for the second coming of Christ to occur, that there needs to be a violent conflict in the Holy Land where half of the Jewish people are unalived, the other half convert to Christianity. There's this massive battle, and Christ comes back and leads the conversion, and all the unbelievers go away, and they have this new kingdom of Christ and a second coming. To me, that sounds far-fetched, I guess, at best, but there are people that really believe this, and they're using their power and money, which there's a lot of, to influence government policy in ways that may indeed bring about Armageddon. That's very scary. Let's get Federico's point of view, and then I have to close out.
Well, actually, what I want to say, I watch sometimes this beautiful young generation.
Sammy, I have to close up in about a minute, so I wanted to give Federico the last word since you've had a pretty lengthy stay. So thank you for being patient.
Oh, we good, Chip. I know you have to see your friends, so we're not gonna take any more of your time. Looking to see you forward soon. Hopefully, we'll start all over. And everyone in here, please support Chip in every way possible you guys can. He deserves everything we can do for him.
Thanks, Federico. In that regard, and again, I hate even asking for this, but if you're somebody who has resources and you want to help a little bit, I have just basic living expenses. That's all I try to cover. I'm doing trading as my business, which is not easy, but I'm getting better at it. But there are donation links in the bottom of my link in my bio. If you want to see this conversation, we talked a lot about how to change the fundamental politics of the current power structure. If you're curious, this will be recorded and uploaded to YouTube and Rumble. And those links are also available by clicking on the link in my bio. It says Linktree Chip Barnes. So I do have to go, unfortunately. I thank everybody for being here on this wonderful Sunday. Thanks for the contributors and the
Thank you
panelists.
very
and those
much.
comments. Okay, everybody. I will
Thank
see you soon. Have a good rest of your weekend. Bye-bye. Take care.